It's true, because the Bible says so. Now, as a Christian, I disagree with this reasoning, especially when talking with people with different faith and belief. It can feel very frustrating to get this circular reasoning, like, what if it's corrupted? Or what if it's written just to control people? Those are fair questions. So here are reasons to take the Bible seriously. Not why you must believe it, but why it deserves serious consideration. People think that Jesus is just a made up fairy tale, but here are reasons why that is very unlikely. One of the strongest types of historical evidence is hostile testimony. Tacitus, a widely accepted Roman historian, written no later than 120 AD, says this in Annals 15.44. It says, Christus, the founder of the name, had undergone the death penalty in the reign of Tiberius by sentence of the procurator Pontius Pilatus. Not only that, he called Christianity a most mischievous superstition. He was writing about the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD, and Nero the Emperor blamed Christians for it. So Nero was the main focus of this book. Christ and Christians was just a side detail. They had no reasons of promoting something they held hatred for. And Tacitus wasn't the only one. If you want more sources, you can check out Pliny the Younger, the letter to Trojan, Josephus in the Antiquities of the Jews, briefly mentioned Jesus neutrally, and Lucian of Samosata mocking Christians as satire, and that's only external sources. Was the Old Testament corrupted so these prophecies can look like it got fulfilled? Well, let's take a look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's a collection of Jewish ancient manuscripts found between 1947 and 1956, and the scrolls date around 250 BC to 70 AD, and it includes copies of almost every single book in the Old Testament. It is one of the most remarkable things, and one of the most remarkable discovery is the Great Isaiah Scroll. It's dated around 125 before Christ, and it has the entire 66 chapters of Isaiah. And if you compare to the Old Testament we have today, the text is overwhelmingly identical. So what about the 5% then? It's only spelling variations, word order changes, and style differences, which is expected because, they write it by hand. But the overall meaning of the book is unaffected. Is the New Testament even reliable? Like, what if it's corrupted? Well, that's a very fair objection. But here's the truth. The New Testament is generally dated by historians to 50 to 100 AD, with skeptical scholarship rarely dating any book to 110 AD. And a conservative counting of the number of Greek manuscripts is at least 5,800. Now that is a lot, but why does that matter? For comparison, do we believe that Alexander the Great existed? Well, the main biographies were written 400 years after his death. And do you know the second ancient text with the most ancient manuscripts? It's the Homer Iliad, with over 1,800 manuscripts. Now that is still a lot, but it just does not compare to the New Testament. And we believe that Julius Caesar existed, but his manuscript count was only 10. Plato had 200, Aristotle 1,000, with surviving manuscripts around 900 AD. So here's the key points. The New Testament was written and circulated at the time of the eyewitnesses, meaning the eyewitnesses could refute and point out misinformation early. And it's not even a bold claim to say the New Testament has the strongest manuscript tradition out of any ancient text. This is not controversial. It is widely accepted in textual scholarship. What if they write the Bible to control people and make them believe in a fairy tale? Well, here's the problem with that objection. People centuries apart cannot coordinate a propaganda project. That would be extremely difficult. It's written over 1,000 years with 40 different authors. So how could these authors, centuries apart, coordinate a plan if many of them were already dead? It was written by 40 authors, you gotta remember that, in different regions and professions. But what is remarkable about this is that it moves from creation to the fall to God's promise and then to fulfillment of those promises thousands of years later, and the Bible tells one unified story. So 40 authors, centuries apart, in different regions with consistent storyline. That would be extremely hard to explain as a propaganda project. The Bible presents itself as cohesive. This is why people debate over certain passages, because the text is internally structured and complex. It's not random mythology. No one seriously debates the divinity of Zeus. Wasn't Jesus just a good teacher who was later turned into God? Like, people worship him. But surely Jesus didn't want to be worshipped. But if you read the Bible, that claim would be difficult to hold. His life repeatedly matches the Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah, and one comes from the great Isaiah scroll, confirmed to be 125 before Christ. Isaiah 53 describes a suffering servant who would suffer for the sins of others. For instance, in verse 5, it says, "But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities," which is sins. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Now notice the language. It says that he was pierced, and this prophecy existed 100 years or more than that before the crucifixion even was invented. Even skeptical scholars widely agree that Jesus was crucified. So, why should we treat the Bible seriously? First, it is historically reliable with many external evidence. Second, the dating and Greek manuscript count is extraordinarily strong, with thousands of Greek manuscripts to compare against. Third, despite being written across more than 1,000 years by around 40 authors, the Bible presents itself as one unified story. And fourth, it contains prophetic writings that existed long before the events they describe, such as Isaiah 53. So you don't have to believe in the Bible, but historically, you have to take it seriously. Dismissing it as a fairy tale simply isn't intellectually serious. In the next episode, I will go over the structure and the flow of the Bible.